Hi everyone, this is Kaiser XS from Powerline,
And I'm Sky Knight.
and today we're going to be discussing the Team League meta specifically for New York, because I will be attending this year.
Unfortunately, I am not due to other commitments that I have. However, in another video where I will be leading, we'll tell you where I'm going to be during that weekend.
So we've kind of divvied up three different types of decks that exist in the game. You have your control decks, your tempo decks, and aggro decks. So why don't we start with the control aspect of the meta? Now, we talked through a lot of different decks, but this list was kind of the one that we agreed was pretty comprehensive and covered pretty much everything that's competitively viable for this upcoming event. Now, keep in mind, this event includes GBTO2, which was just released, and it does not include the Legend deck nor Fighters Collection 2015. So there are a couple decks on here that are not going to get as much attention purely because we don't have that yet. So the first one we agreed upon was Kagero, either Perditions or Blade Master. So why don't we discuss a little bit about each of those choices and why they fit into the control category?
Well, how I see it is that with a bunch of their retiring effects, they completely just put your opponents at a minus while you pretty much get to keep yourself at a plus. So by continuously killing off your things and attacking and making you waste more resources out of your hand, pretty much those cards, like the Great entirely by himself, is the one that'll keep you pretty much on the defensive most of the time.
And the thing is that with Perditions, they're a little faster than the X, which is another deck we'll be discussing. But it's a faster deck because it doesn't have to wait till it really hits grade 3 to really do stuff. Like, Perditions arguably have some of the best counter rush in the game. For example, if your opponent is playing like Aquaforce or something that just likes flooding the field and trying to rush you when you're at grade 2, all they have to do is call a Neo Flame in one column and play, what is it, Menace Laser, the one that you play Counterblast 1, retire 1 in front of it?
Yeah, I believe so. But
Yeah. So all you have to do is that to counteract that end of the spectrum. So, I mean, the deck's very flexible. It constantly is retiring, and with the Great just restanding at no real cost because you're just discarding when you draw up check, essentially, then it really simplifies the game state to a point where it's just them tearing down your field and you just trying to constantly catch up to them.
While acquiring a hand.
Yeah, while acquiring a hand as well. But then we have the more, in my opinion, the rogue choice of the two, which is Blade Master. It's a card that's been greatly overlooked because of the X being a thing and because Perditions exist. However, it's still a pretty fun deck and it's still competitively viable.
I agree. I agree with you. Although Kagero is not my area of expertise, to be honest.
You're able to keep striding over it and cheaply retiring units, which is really what Kagero should be doing. It's just cheap retiring. So, in my opinion, I would probably, for me at least, I would probably take Perditions over Blade Master, but for somebody that's maybe on a budget, the Blade Master deck will probably run a lot less. So it gives somebody an option if they really are feeling like they want to play Kagero.
I agree.
Now, the next archetype or deck that we discussed is just Narukami in general.
Yeah.
And it's all because of this card here.
Of course you'd pull out the card.
I would, of course I would. Conquest is a phenomenal card. I mean, it's a really great finisher, and it just has a lot of synergy with what Narukami's about, front row retiring. And so I personally have two builds right now that are probably the most viable, which are the Sweep Command build that everybody seems to be hyping up, and the Crimson Legion deck with Vermilion. And personally, I'm not a fan of gimmicks. I don't like playing with the Sweep Command build purely because it's relying on that starter going off and checking in the top 10 for Sweep Command, so you do the whole restand thing. And while it may be viable, I don't view it as a well-rounded deck in comparison to like the Crimson deck, where I can play this. And yes, if you're wondering, I do play this deck in real life. Or you could play this card, which kills off like Judge Bow and any of the problematic starters. Like if I go into a mirror match and I see that they're playing that Eradicator starter, I laugh because I just get off this or Death Scythe. I have so many outs to it. So for me, if I had to choose a Narukami build, I would choose Crimson for regionals.
You know what I'm most concerned about, for this new meta is actually the new bind mechanic. It pretty much stomps all over Legion decks, and it now causes the player of the Legion deck to be more aware of what's going into their graveyard, and without really any new outs per se to get back those cards, you're really just at a minus when you're playing Legion against the new Narukami stuff. So it's not so much the strides and the grade 3s that I'm mostly worrying about. Actually, that one.
It's these two.
Stride actually I'm worried about. But yeah, pretty much those cards that I'm mostly worried about. Just removing stuff from my field and from my graveyard just hurts so much more if you're playing Legion.
At one point, I had a teammate that was considering playing Grand Blue at the event, and we were just testing, and I was borrowing my friend's deck, and he was playing Grand Blue against me. I strode into this. He read the card and said, "That's fair. It's a rare," and he just kind of saddened his face a little bit. So yes, this deck is incredibly powerful because of those units, but I think it's important to just have a very balanced deck for like a team event where you have to go through many rounds of Swiss and your team is kind of relying on you to pull out wins in a lot of scenarios. I think Ami's a very strong control deck right now.
Ooh, sounds like someone needs help.
Yeah, especially against this Link Joker deck. Yeah.
So what's next on the list, buddy?
Yeah. The one rogue deck that we agreed on for control was Glendios. Not because I've played against it enough that I know how to deal with it, but it's just a really annoying grind deck. I really hope nobody takes that because people are just going to end up going into time and then crying because they're gonna lose.
I can definitely attest to that. Being on the opposite end of a Glendios player, you're trying to play around it and they're just laughing at you, and it's just grindy. So grindy.
It is really boring to play against. And like, I get it. It's probably good for what it does, and it's probably the only Link Joker build that I feel like I would really see. But without the Fighters Collection stride, I don't really feel like that deck's going to make as much of an impact as it could. While in Japan, like there have been a couple tops where Glendios has won events because it's anti-Diablo. That's my favorite thing to hear. But I don't know. I don't know how many people will actually take that purely because it kind of has Musketeer syndrome where it just natural. It's not even the player's fault. It's just a very long game.
Musketeer syndrome?
Well, I'm saying for Musketeer syndrome, I say that because you have to spend some time choosing the unit, shuffling the deck. It just adds a lot of time onto the game that doesn't really need to be there. I think Glendios is just one of those decks that you play against and you're like, wow, I'm gonna have to sit here for 30 minutes before this game is done. Either they're gonna deck out, or I'm going to lose because I just played stupidly. But
no, they don't deck out because they play Dark Zodiac.
Well, now they do. Yeah, that's true. Or they can. Do they? I don't even know the current build anymore.
No, they do. They do.
Do they play Zodiac and then Glendios in addition?
Yep.
Then you play Cradles, right?
Yep. So the next deck, or cards that we are on the lookout for would be those Dimension Police players.
Yeah, this is So we've kind of agreed that there's some decks or clans that kind of fall in between two categories. So, for example, I mean, we have our control, which is very clearly retiring and trying to control the game state. And then you have tempo, which is more about kind of having an in-between between a more aggressive deck and a control deck. And then you have aggro, which is just pure power. So there are basically anything that's come out from the new extra booster is pretty viable. Cosmic Heroes with Metal Borgs are a thing, especially that Laurel never got limited. I don't understand that.
I do.
Well, I mean, it's because they're speeding. They're doing what Bushiroad does best. They speed through sets, so things get overshadowed in the U.S. that do not get they don't get addressed, like Cat Butler. Cat Butler never ended up getting addressed here because we were in Legion format for such a short period of time that they couldn't gauge how powerful the card actually was in the U.S.
What do you want me to say?
I know.
I don't think it needed to be banned or restricted. Just like all needs to be restricted.
I think I kind of liked the Japanese approach to putting Laurel to 1 because like it kind of sucks because now decks are playing the new Unflipper Perfect cards, which means that these Deep Police players that are like teching in Laurels, all they have to do is go, oh, I saw them play an old, or they can go to the assumption the opponent's playing a new one, generally now. I can go to the assumption I could attack the rear guard and get 3 in the hand for free. I don't know how you feel about that. Like, anyway.
But we shouldn't talk about free cards. I'm looking at you, the X.
Well, no, I mean, that's another deck we'll discuss. But so the builds that we mentioned were Metal Borgs with Cosmic Heroes. That's kind of the deck to look out for. And then, I mean, when Heavy Duke hits the meta, pure Metal Borgs, yes, good deck. True Deck Kaiser is still very competitively viable. Sky Knight plays that deck, and it's very good. And then there's one more build that's been kind of overlooked until Canada, which was the Zeal build. But at one point, Sky Knight should do a deck profile on his build. It's a different take on Zeal. I think you should. I'm just throwing that out there.
I'll think about it.
So then, Zeal kind of fits into the tempo category. So why don't we cover decks within that? I put Oracle Think Tank there because I don't view it as a particularly aggressive deck, and I don't view it as something that initially really controls the game state outside of Silent Tom. So the 2 decks I had were really the kinds of decks were Susanoo with either Koko or Tsukiyomi, or I had CEO Amaterasu with the Legion Mate. I'm not a huge fan of that deck, but I'm sure people will try to make that work with the new Stride stuff.
It is what it is. It's just a lot of draw and always having a hand to prepare for the worst. So it goes up against your control decks very well, and the recovery after a huge turn from your opponent isn't detrimental to you. You're not wondering where'd my hand go. You're like, I still got a grip, let's go. But again, the power that goes behind it isn't really there unless you're striding.
Well, it has very reactive plays. Like you're saying, because they have the hand, they can kind of... I guess that's where the control end of the game comes, because they kind of decide how they want to play it out. Because they're able to kind of go, okay, well, if I wait next turn and then I draw my toms and I know that I'm hitting triggers, I'll probably win.
Right.
Usually
that's where the Legion comes in, where you're just like, all right, let me throw these cards back in, get what I need, and call it a day.
Yeah.
And they can play the grindy game out, actually. The Amaterasu, at least.
Yeah, well, that's more of a grind deck. Susanoo, my problem when I was testing that out for fun was that, specifically the Susanoo Koko build, I was just trying it out in the area, and you would burn through counterblasts so quickly with that deck that it was kind of absurd. Like, you couldn't your game became maybe 2 or 3 turns of like sustained advantage, and then after that, it would kind of slowly die off if you weren't careful.
Or if you weren't playing lemonades.
Yeah, but people don't play that in Coco.
Right.
Yeah. Lemonade would fix that problem, but the deck is soulless Coco. So, anyway. So, the next deck that we kind of brushed on before was the X. Now, this deck is a grind deck. I mean, it wins games by outgrinding the opponent and basically destroying them slowly with like the X Persona Blast and gaining advantage with the Dode Persona Blast. So it grinds the game out until your opponent has nothing and then wins. I was playing a game against a friend of ours the other day where, I mean, granted he kind of got a lot of triggers towards the end, but we were playing and he ended up surviving my conquest turn after I healed on 6th, and I had a 7k rearguard out in the front, and he just laughed because I knew he had the Dote in hand, and I knew I was going to lose next turn. He attacks the rearguard with the X, and he drive checks 2 criticals, all go on the Vanguard. I didn't have enough to guard the Vanguard, so I take it thinking, oh, maybe I'll heal somehow, and he checks 2 more criticals. It was painful. So the deck's just able to come back in situations it probably shouldn't. And I don't know, I mean, it's just a very good deck. However, with that being said, it's not the powerhouse it was in set 1 now.
I don't think the power is gone. I think the hype is gone.
I mean, it's still powerful, but you have more decks that can deal with it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's lost its power. I'm just saying that it's not like it's up here and everything else is down here now. Now the playing field is a lot more level. Or in that case, I'm kind of showing that GBTO2 outpaces set 1.
You know, I disagree.
I know, but that's how I feel about it. Like, I think that a deck like Narukami can probably handle the X better, mainly because of the strides. I'm not going to deny that. The strides definitely put a good up fight with that deck.
I think it's more of the getting rid of the graveyard, the drop zone.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I play against that deck, I go into Zoras more than I do Conquest because all I want to do is bind their overlords. It's wonderful.
So let's see. So another deck that we both thought to be on the lookout for the regionals would be Aquaforce. And as Skynet and Kaiser both said, Lambros with anything.
Yeah, well, that fits in more to the aggro tier, but it's basically, from when I was testing the deck, and our friend even said this to us, oh, you're playing Lambros? Just choose the card that looks prettiest to go along with it. And it's kind of true, to be honest with you. I mean, he was being facetious when he said that, but
that makes me laugh.
It's true, though, because Lambros is such a phenomenal card. It's so good. I mean, that restand on 2 units with 10k, and if you ended up choosing, like, if you really live the dream and you don't activate Magnum or Title's Effect prior to that going off, you're going to win. Like, it's very rare that somebody can actually end up surviving that deck. Unless you're playing a deck like OTT, or even another deck we could discuss is Grey Nature, where that deck can kind of... That fits into the tempo category, by the way. The 2 builds that would work are Tester Fox and Big Berry, and both of them establish a hand very easily. And they take out their rear guards so Aquaforce can't get off their combos. So Aquaforce is a very strong pick, but I feel like other decks can kind of deal with it, which is good. It's healthy.
Says an Arcani player.
Yeah.
So again, I know he touched up on it, but Great Nature also to look out for with the Big Berry build and or the Tester Fox Break Ride build. Those are two to watch out for.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's kind of annoying as an Arakami player when you're playing against a deck that gets rid of your front row, so you have no incentive to really tire the front row. Like, the way I...
Graveyard.
What?
You can always attack that graveyard.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's Zoras. I stand by that. That card's really good. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's a very solid deck. It develops a hand. The guard restrict on the Nagmar with Crayon Tiger is phenomenal. It's a good deck. I think it's a strong pick.
Aye. So, lastly, the one nation that we did not touch up on is United Sanctuary. And there are a lot of good decks that still reside in there.
Well, we actually
talk about Angel Feather.
We have a decent amount of stuff in addition to that. We have, yeah.
Also, your Chronicle.
Yeah. That was a big one. Let's talk about that first, because I don't like that deck. And
wow.
And I'll be very open about that. I think it's good or whatever, and I think it's okay, but
wow,
I don't like playing against it because it's one of those decks that kind of a bad player can beat a good player purely because the good player doesn't have a perfect card. I don't like that. Like, the guard restrict thing annoys me enough as is, but when I have to deal with 2 Ragnarclocks, and then if I survive that and my opponent goes, well, I'm just going to be stupid now and pump my... Now that you have the trigger out for Chronojet, I'm just going to pump up my Chronojet to such a number that you can't guard it.
Don't forget the raid 2.
Which one is that?
The one Sobas, and then it gets Silent Tom, I
believe. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that.
And then there's the Legion. You can... The amount of guard restriction that is in Gear Chronicle is to the point of absurdity. However, it's you as a defending player need to, I guess, either kill them first or work on your skill. That's, I guess, from what everyone has been talking to me and I've been talking to them about, the game now has gotten to a point where it's about skill rather than luck. But Gear Chronicle gives you a bit of both, depending on who you are as a player.
It gives you a lot of leeway. That's the thing, and that's the thing that bothers me, because it doesn't necessarily reward good players. It just it rewards getting very lucky. Like, on the off chance your opponent does not have a perfect guard, you win the game because they have a crit added onto it. Like, if they had the guard restrict but no crit, I could deal with that. I could play my game very comfortably playing against that matchup. But the fact that they're getting a critical makes everything much more difficult. So now what I've started doing, and my friend taught me, was if I'm playing against a deck like that, or even Royal Paladins, which we will get to, and I have to deal with either Saint-Blo or Ragnarok, as I call him, I will take their beginning stride, because the advantage they gain off that I can just rip out of hand. But I need my perfect guard to deal with the Saint-Blo play or the Ragnarok. And my hope is that in defending myself from that, I can just come back and destroy them before they could do it again.
I mean, again, a perfect world.
Yeah, perfect world. This is pure, somehow this all happens. But also, once again, I mean, without the deck striding, it doesn't do a lot for me.
Depends.
I guess it depends on the build, but I never found that it did enough for me. Like, I tried it out, but I'm not a big fan of it. But anyway, I mentioned it already, but Royal Paladins is a deck to look out for. And now there are 2 builds that I can think of that are going to be really good. One of them is a build my teammate's taking. It's Altamile with something else that is not Thing Saber. I don't want to give it away, though, because depending on how I do at regionals, I will maybe get deck profiles. Just saying.
Oh, snaps! So you're going to be doing a deck profile?
Yeah, I'll get deck profiles of my whole team if we end up doing well.
You heard it. You heard it here.
So, the Altamile build with some other stuff is very good, and his build is terrifying. I'm so excited because we were testing the other day, and the results were just like speaking for themselves. I mean, again, he has such a better Narukami matchup now. Then in comparison, he was trying out Thing Saver, Altamile, Jules, that whole shenanigans deck that really, I mean, it's good, but it mixes too many engines for me. It mixes basically three separate decks. That, I mean, and they, just the synergy like between those three engines is kind of hard to match up with. And the way people were playing it was to really focus on Thing Saver when you might be better off just playing Pure Seekers. So I don't know. I think Royal Paladins is still a very good call, and especially with a bunch of like Narukami being out there, it's a good call against that deck.
Mm. Another deck that we were to look out for in the United Sanctuary was Shadow Paladins. I don't feel that they're bad. It's specifically the Revenger build that people are clamoring about. I still think they have a place right now. Just they probably have to work a little bit harder and or smarter about what they do, and it's not so much autopilot. Another deck that we talked about to be on the lookout for is the Liberators, specifically the Bluish Flames. That Legion also is particularly useful in this area where we're talking more about skill rather than just dumb luck autopilot.
Well, I see Revengers are just a very solid overall deck, and they have a lot of great things going for them. Judge Bow is a phenomenal card. The Blaster Dark cards are great for control aspects. It's a very well-rounded deck. And then you have a Legion that restands. So, I mean, it's very good. But the fact that it uses Krail Elementals kind of, it lessens its power in comparison to a few other things. But when the Legend deck gets released, then the deck is just, it's great. It's great again. I mean, what a surprise.
So we also forgot to mention some other decks / clans.
Yeah.
I'm going to top off with Spike Brothers.
Yeah, the Crush Rush. Everybody knows what it is. Break Ride into the Ogle and just game. It's easy. I mean, granted, you don't play that deck like a Stride deck. You use the Stride in there pretty much to fill the mid game out a little bit, but it's a Crush Rush deck. Like, it's just pure YOLO, and
it works. It's a YOLO deck that works. You can't be mad at it.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing that can go wrong.
Except not riding Bad End Dragger, which is a big flaw.
Yes. But again, there's so much mid game. Like, you have time to wait because you're striding. Like, you have the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it helps fill in the gap. So then there are only two other clans really that we have to discuss. Neonectar, Maidens and Musketeers.
And Nova Grapplers.
And Nova Grapplers, which we will get to. That'll be the last thing we talk about, because that's another deck I play.
This guy.
Yeah. So I find that I do not like Maidens. I don't. I'm very honest about this. Like, I don't like Maidens one bit. It loses really hard to retiring. Musketeers are a better deck because they're at least able to recover or at least establish a field or just get something going, but it bothers me, that cloning mechanic. I used to play Sephiroth back when Dote was the best deck in the game.
I used to play Maidens before GBT, and I moved on to Musketeers because, again, as you saw in one of my videos, I am superficial.
It's a good, I mean, but it's a better deck. You know, I mean, granted, it may not be the best deck in the game, but it's still, like, it's a good deck. It rushes. It's able to function. You have your build that runs Elvira is good. It's just...
Maidens hit harder.
But Musketeers have to
faster and leaves your decks full of triggers.
Yeah.
There are two different types of decks that are played the same.
Pretty much.
Play the same.
All right, so then there's the last clan, which I hold near and dear to myself, Nova Grapplers. So,
Hold on, you're not the only one that holds it near and dear, sir.
well, yeah, you play Beast Deities.
Of course, like a champ.
Yes, and I was gonna cover that. Come on. So there are 3 builds that I feel could compete really, and then one that's kind of here depending on the matchup. So the 3 are Risers, which people are still continuing to play. They're still playing for Cat Builder because it's a thing. And sure, have fun, but
there's no reason not to. It's still a good deck even with the support in GBT01.
It's still good.
You've moved on.
I've moved on, and I feel that Extreme Battlers are a more consistent deck for me, at least. I really enjoy playing Extreme Battlers. It's another build, and I find that the restanding that I get from that deck, it's very good, and it has a very good game plan. Sasanda's a great card. Cool Hank's a good card.
White Hank. I went there.
For those who didn't notice on the deck profile video, I said White Hank instead of Cool Hank because at that point the translation was not out. Cool Hank is a really stupid name, Bushy Road. It makes me feel like an idiot now, and every one of my friends harasses me, and now I hate myself and you. Anyway, so the last build that a teammate of mine has been toying with, and Skynet has been as well, Beast Deities with the Limit Break Enabler. Extreme with a Limit Break Enabler, if your opponent is at grade 2, they are going to have such a bad time. Because you just throw down... I mean, the dream is you're on Extreme, you have the Limit Break Enabler behind a Brainy Papio, and you have like a Golden Anglet on the other one. So you can restand your whole field, basically.
For free.
Yeah, for nothing. Unless you run Max Beat. Max Beat's a phenomenal card as well.
But it's just
1 or 2 counterblasts. In addition to that, you could
free counterblast. It's so counterblast light, but what you get out of it with Extreme, like you don't even need the Break Ride, which is hilarious. You don't need the Break Ride. You just play Extreme and you go to town.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only issue I found with the deck was that I actually wouldn't run the Break Ride anymore. If I were to play it, I would run Reverse. As much as I hate the card, at least it gives me some sort of additional plan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I have to sit on the Break Ride and wait and then Break Ride, I don't like that in Stride format. I want to play Vanguards that can function on their own.
And this is why Skynet does not play Daikaiser Break Ride in his Dimensional Robo deck, because I hate waiting.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't like waiting one bit. But granted, the decks might have to wait, but it's a lot faster than waiting to Break Ride. It's ridiculous.
I agree. And what is the last deck people are talking about?
The last one is one that I took to regionals, actually, last year. Yeah. And that's Blouse. People are still holding on to the deck, and they're playing it, and they're trying to use like the new Stride stuff with it. And that's good, but that being said, it dies hard if it loses its starter. And especially, I mean, I was testing against it 2 days ago, and my opponent flips up Morganrot, and I showed him this. And he literally said, all right, you win, bye, and left me on Cardfight area. Because if that deck loses its starter, it loses a lot of momentum that it needs. And I still remember from the Novell days when I would lose my starter, I'd be like, damn it, I'm pretty sure I just lost because of that.
Lucky thing that I don't really think that way.
Well, yeah, but you're also playing a different deck. It's just...
Hold on. If you're going to call me out like that, remember, I did play Beast Deity, so I know what happens when you lose Rhyhorn.
No, I'm not calling you out like that. I'm not calling you out one bit. I'm saying with Morganrot, it's just more imperative to how that deck pressures.
Bruh. I'll give that to you.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's how I play and it's how I feel, sir.
right, that opinion granted.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, you know, making a team is a really difficult thing to kind of go about doing because we were talking about this before. Like, my friends and I have been talking a lot about order and like how we're gonna order our team. Like, oh, number one should be this, number one should be that, number two should be this, number three should like. It's just a lot of speculation, and when you're making a team, it's good to kind of predict how maybe the game will go, but you can't spend so much time about it that you end up obsessing and kind of screwing yourself over.
True.
So these are our predictions for decks to maybe consider or look out for Team League New York specifically. And I guess the next thing we're going to do when we were talking about this will be I'm going to be doing a vlog video from my experience at the regionals. And yes, I know, the first. And Sky Knight will be doing another video, which we will keep a secret until that is done, from what he will be going to the same weekend I will be at Team League.
Aye. And if you happen to see Kaiser XS at the team regionals, be sure to play them. And if you're lucky, your match will get recorded and be featured on our channel, name and all.
Yeah, and if you have a channel, we'll feature you on there as well. I'm gonna try and record every round and get my teammates, and hopefully we make top 8, and then I can do a deck profile proudly showing that off. Sky Knight actually top 8'd the New York Regionals last year.
Like a champ.
With D-Please.
Like a double champ.
So now,
it's sad that I'm not going to be able to attend this year, but again, previous engagements are preview.
I will be going on basically in his place from his old team in some ways.
Yes.
So hopefully that team will pull off the win again. I don't know. Because of just going to college and stuff, playing Vanguard was kind of hard. So now I'm back home for the summer, so it's going to be a lot easier to kind of compete and hopefully pull out some wins this time around.
And our channel will be much more active than it has been in the last 3 weeks. I apologize, but we both have just been extremely busy with life. So with that said, do you have any final comments for our lovely viewers?
No, I mean, if you see me at Team League, please come and say hi. I promise I will not bite.
Much.
Yeah. Hey. All right, anyway. I'm Kaiser.
And I'm Sky Knight.
And thank you for watching.
Bye.